Hey, it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review. Going to talk about the brand new edition of Howard Jones' Humans Lib on CD and Blu-ray. I'm not the biggest fan of electronic pop music, but I really enjoyed Howard Jones when he came out. It was in college radio, 1984. This came out. The album was kind of big for us as an electronic album. And then he followed up this album with Dream Into Action, which back in the 80s, artists would release a full concert video on VHS. It would kind of be not really a big deal. Everybody was doing it. Judas Priest had one. Bruce Springsteen would throw one out there. Whoever, they were just doing it a lot in the 80s and early 90s, and that kind of went by the wayside. But he released a concert video with a lot of technology, had one of the first headphone mics and digital lighting and all that kind of stuff, but a full band. And it really made me a fan after this. But this one just has always stuck in my college mindset because it was in rotation when I got on college radio, and he went on to be bigger. But this album didn't quite cross over in the United States like his next album would. Some of these songs, New Song, What Is Love, obviously Hide and Seek, these got regular play on our college station mixed in with some of the rock and other alternative stuff that we were playing at the time. But looking back at this album getting a release, it did okay in as far as the critics went. A lot of critics were not a big fan of this all-electronic kind of light music. But you know what? When was the last time you sat down for an hour and just listened to an album? Didn't play with your phone, didn't do anything else, just listen to an album. Well, I did that because I wanted to hear the mixes, but I also hadn't listened to this album since college, really. I own the remastered versions of the first two Howard Jones albums. I always said I've been a fan, but I honestly never pull them out, never listened to them. So I had not listened to Humans Lib in decades, and I was blown away by it. Truly blown away by it. Not so much by the musicality. I mean, it is all keyboards and synthesizers, and that was what it was supposed to be. But the mix is incredible. The original guy who mixed the albums, the first two albums, Stephen A. Taylor, returned and did the 5.1 mixes for both of these albums. He was the guy who originally mixed them back in the 80s. He was part of the team. He is part of the DNA, as Howard Jones said. There are 12-page booklets in both CDs that give you kind of a question-answer session with the mixer and Howard Jones. They talk about how they put some of these songs together and things like that. So they got him to do the 5.1 mix of both albums, and then they got Bob Clearmountain, who's a very famous mixer, to do Dolby Atmos mixes of 3 songs from each album. Since I'm only talking about Humans Lib, we'll talk about those. I will say that Dream Into Action sounds just as amazing, but I have not spent the time with it that I did with the first one. The other night, I sat down and literally went through the entire album. I A-B'd the new stereo mix versus the 5.1 mix, and then it was all said and done. I went back and listened to the Dolby Atmos mixes. I almost wish I had listened to the Dolby Atmos mixes first, because in most cases, I am a huge fan of Dolby Atmos as a format. But I got to say, the 5.1 mixes are better. Bob Clearmountain did a really professional, really great, immersive job with the Dolby Atmos mixes of the 3 songs. But the entire album, the 5.1 mix, is just enveloping. It is loud. It is boisterous. It is in your face. These synthesizers weave in and out of the surround sound. It's just clear and super high res, too. The 5.1 and stereo mixes are encoded at 96K 24-bit, where the Dolby Atmos is only at 48K. Do my ears tell much of the difference? I'm not too sure about that, but I will say that the 5.1 mixes just blew me away. I did not expect these albums to sound that great. The whole reason I picked them up is because, well, they're Cherry Red, they're import. Cherry Red is the name of the label. You couldn't get them easily in the United States, and when the ad popped up on my Facebook feed, I saw some people in England had already gotten them, and we're talking about how great the mixes were. I've been in surround sound mixes since the late 90s and early 21st century, when the labels first started getting into DVD audio and 5.1 surround. I still have the original Stone Temple Pilots debut album in 5.1, or the remix album from Linkin Park in 5.1. I've got those early Porcupine Tree stuff from Steven Wilson remixed into surround sound that he was working on that early on in those days. So I've been into surround sound mixes for a long time. I got to say, these two Howard Jones mixes are some of the best I've heard. Now, I did a podcast recently where I talked about Dolby Atmos, and the new Pearl Jam album and the new Peter Gabriel album and the new Steven Wilson albums are all amazing examples of what you can do with music in Dolby Atmos. But this, taking a step back to just a 5.1 mix of the debut album from Howard Jones, blew me away. The sound quality, the clarity is incredible. But the mix, I don't know that I will ever listen to this album any other way. I am going to burn or take the CD, the stereo mix, into my car and check it out. I haven't done that yet. But in A-B comparing them on my main system, there's no contest. The 5.1 mix is just enveloping and incredible. The stereo mix sounds great. And I put it on my system where I record these podcasts. It sounds audiophile quality. Amazing. But the surround sound mix, really, Stephen A. Taylor did an amazing job. Stephen W. Taylor. Now, Rupert Hine did a lot of the production, and if you're not familiar with him, he did a lot of more electronic keyboardy things. He did the Better Off Dead soundtrack. He worked with Cy Kernan and the guys in The Fix. He did a lot of very interesting, very 80s sounding mixes, but one of the things that the 5.1 mix does for this Howard Jones album is bring it into modern times. They haven't changed anything. I mean, it still sounds like an 80s synthesizer-drenched pop album, but so full, so enveloping, it sounds new. It really, his vocals are just incredibly clear. The separation in the instruments and the different synthesizers and the different washes, the sounds, it just all is so much clearer and defined. And it's a true experience to sit down and listen to this. I can't wait to get into Dream into Action. But like I said, listening to Bob Clearmountain's mixes of the 3 songs in Dolby Atmos, they sound great. And if the whole album had been that way, I would have been happy with it. But again, listening to the 5.1 first, there's no comparison. Stephen W. Taylor just did an incredible job on bringing these albums into modern times into a 5.1 mix that really highlights all of the good things about them. The songs are well written. Sure, they're pop songs, and some are a little sparse in their arrangements, but it's still good quality stuff. And this album eventually became kind of the blueprint of everything Howard Jones did after. So I think in retrospect, the albums probably deserve a little bit better review than they got when it first came out. And this mix is a perfect opportunity to revisit it. I cannot wait to get into Dream into Action. It just a spot check of it sounds just as good as Humans Lib. But Howard Jones, Humans Lib, go ahead and import it. They're an all-region Blu-ray. The CD obviously will play on any CD player. The Blu-ray will play on any 5.1 system. Sounds incredible. Even if you don't have Dolby Atmos, get the 5.1 mix. I just can't recommend it highly enough. As I said in that previous podcast, I would recommend listening to the Dolby Atmos mix of Pearl Jam over the stereo and the Peter Gabriel over the stereo. And this, the same. This 5.1 mix is incredible on an album that came out a long time ago. It's a 40-year-old electronic pop album that sounds amazing. So pick it up if you can. If you can import it, it's more than worth it. And I'll be back with a review of the second one. Howard Jones' Humans Lib, now available in a Blu-ray CD set. It was about $21.99 plus shipping and import and all that. Highly worth it if you're into surround sound music and you have the setup for it. It is literally one of the best remasters. And I've got a lot of the Jethro Tull, Marillion stuff that Steven Wilson did. Big fan of surround sound. These rank up there. Really, really highly up there on the way I'm going to listen to these Howard Jones albums from now on. Howard Jones' Humans Lib, it's available now. You can import it at your leisure. I'm Scott. I'm ROCKFILE. Thanks for checking out this podcast on music for once. We'll do more of those, I promise. Links are below if you want to support the channel. Have a spectacular day.